coming off your phone. You don't have control like we would have if you was on your computer. But I understand how you got to do it.
Yeah.
And that light is killing your look. You gotta.
I know. Let me adjust my camera a little bit so that sensor don't get in it too much.
Yeah, sit. There you go.
There we are right now.
We still can't.
All right.
You can't scoot over more.
Let me get over here.
Yeah, or more away from that light.
And we'll get you like this here.
There you go.
All right.
All right. Now I can share my screen. Can you see me now?
Yeah, I can see you, Pitt.
Okay, so hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, you got it. You got your screen transfixed where it's only on you. Is your white box highlighted around you?
Nah.
Why isn't it going back and forth when I speak?
Okay, hold on.
Like I have to physically do it.
All right, hold on. Let me check my settings in the other room real quick.
Okay. What up, y'all? I guess we live. Let me talk since he working on his settings and he done hit the live button on us. Well, I'm on here with New Aussie and we about to do a Bitcoin show, talk about the Bitcoin a little bit. I guess he's seen I was going in on the subject and he decided he wanted to take it a little further, kind of give y'all some Bitcoin information. So, you know, that's what we're here to do. Drop it down on the Bitcoin. Break it down. I'm just waiting for the brother to get his technicals together over here. And we on it. Hope y'all enjoy the information. You are presenting to everyone. All right. Okay. Wait a minute. I don't know what he just did. All right. Well, we live 365 on the bootleg.
All right, yeah, we live on the Bootleg Network with the brother Pitt Boss here. This is your brother Richard with New Aussie Media. And we just trying to get it set up to continue our little talk that we had earlier about Bitcoin. And the man who actually brought the conversation to the community, Digital Pitt Boss himself. I'm here with y'all right now. We're going to get into a little bit of information. Pitt Boss, could you just give us a little bit of your backstory before we get into this whole Bitcoin thing, please, sir?
Okay, now I do want you to know the way you got it set up that the camera is transfixed on me. I didn't know if that's what.
Yeah, I just did that right now because I know you wanted to show your screen a little bit later on.
Oh, okay, no sweat. Okay, you say just give a little backdrop on the Bitcoin?
Yes, sir, if you don't mind. Just a little bit on your history and then a little bit into how you got into Bitcoin and everything.
Okay, well, with me, my name is Digital Pitt Boss. I pretty much push Pan-African paradigm. In my paradigm, I teach Pan-Africanism by the understanding of Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Nat Turner, Martin Delany, men like that, Edward Blythe, and various men. And so within that understanding, there's a teaching that they call the STEM program, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so because I push the STEM program, I try to deal with every aspect of that paradigm. And that is how the Bitcoin works its way into that fray, because the Bitcoin would be an extension of technology, and it is also a useful tool. The Bitcoin history then had some real crazy things going on with the Bitcoin, but nevertheless, they have started to develop in more cryptocurrencies. And therefore, I felt the need that the information needs to get more out to the community that I speak to. And so I did a show, and now we in on the Bitcoin.
Perfect. Now, could you let us in on your personal experience with Bitcoin?
Okay, well, as far, I've had several people who I have been dealing with over the years, and they primarily make Bitcoin their main objective, right? And so I brought several people on my show to speak about the Bitcoin, introduce it at various times, probably over I'll say about 6 weeks ago, I did a show. I showed the price of the Bitcoin. I had suggested that my fan base go out and get a Bitcoin wallet. And then from that particular time, the Bitcoin was worth $750. And so today, the current price that I just reported on, it's right under $900. So the Bitcoin is pretty much operates just like regular US currency. It's just a different means of exchange where you kind of remove government, how can I say, responsibility over your transaction, meaning that you are no longer using their paper money for a medium of exchange. It is the same way we would do if you owed gold and I owned a car, we wanted to make an exchange, the gold for the car. So my personal experience in dealing with this is that this has a value that works in so many ways. You definitely could just buy regular things like a pizza. You know, you can order pizza offline. There are companies that take Bitcoin. They'll deliver it right to your door. Nothing is different. So, I mean, in my personal experience, it works just like money.
Yeah, that's what I talked about earlier in the first video when I was trying to get up with you. I just talked a little bit about Bitcoin and how now all of the vendors now make that truly an acceptable form of payment where people walk up and pay for Bitcoins, whether it be at food trucks or vendors at special events. Everybody's pretty much taking Bitcoin. When you see a Bitcoin ATM, you know it's pretty well established in the marketplace. The second question I had was, how does Bitcoin relate to the STEM program? I tried to relate that earlier on, but to you, how does Bitcoin itself actually relate to the STEM program?
Okay, well, the STEM program ultimately is about nation building, right? When the STEM program was introduced to Black people, it was around it was even introduced earlier than that. With Edward Blyden and a couple of other men, but I pretty much focus on Booker T because he had developed an entire college around that. And so by developing the STEM, it was a way to lift us up out of the slave and impoverished condition that we was in and take us to a more economic upliftment. So now when I see the current condition, let's say you and I wanted to travel to Africa and go make a purchase of some sort. Let's say we're going to go buy a truckload of cotton from Africa and move it over to some other country, right? Now, if we wanted to move large sums of money over there, we would have various things we would have to go through when we travel through the airport, deal with various systems of government coming in and out of their countries with a truckload of money. Even if we did it through the banking system, we would still have the same issues with the way we have to deal with taxes on our trade, lots of various things. So what the Bitcoin does is it eliminates some of those headaches, and it allows you to maneuver freely with your Bitcoin, and you could arrive at different states, different countries, and you can commence trade to anyone that will accept the Bitcoin in exchange for the merchandise or the product or service that you want. So it just helps in the way that we can do business with each other and on a global level. And, you know, it's the latest technology. So definitely the STEM program is about advancing technology. So we have to stay moving with what the technology is.
That's exactly one of the points I made earlier, because the whole thing about the Bitcoin is based on a mathematical calculation. So that in itself, I was presenting earlier saying that that's STEM in itself to be able to engineer the mathematical equation for the Bitcoin and to have it set up so that a Bitcoin is just not produced every time they solve it. Every time it's solved, the program automatically makes the equation harder, and it needs more processing power to produce the Bitcoin, which in turn makes the value of the Bitcoin either rise or fall, depending on how quick that equation is solved to produce a Bitcoin. So I was just explaining early on how that is the key essential essence of STEM, is understanding whether it be the mathematics of it, the science of building the computer servers that handle that, and the science of managing the network and distributing the open source software for people to mine the Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, you know, the Bitcoin, let's look at the Bitcoin, consider it gold in the ground, right? And so they use the similar terms that we're used to. We mine for gold. You dig gold out the ground. People have a value for the gold. They're willing to give you services and things that they produce for the gold. And so we use the gold as a medium of exchange. Well, we have just created the same concept from an electronic currency, right? Which is called a cryptocurrency, which just simply is electronic currency. So now mining for it is done in the same way as the brother just explained. They have created various softwares that people can go in and solve, and then you can produce a Bitcoin. In order to derive at a total amount of Bitcoins at some point in time will be the finale, and it'll be basically in the world of Bitcoin, it'll be the last Bitcoin that you're able to mine or produce. And therefore, we can look at that as the last gold nugget that we dug out the ground. Now all the gold is out the ground, and the only value of gold is what we have our hands on, right? So now, if they was to go in the ground currently and dig out too much gold too fast, it would drop the price down of gold because it would be too much around. If people bought up the gold and held it, then there would be a huge value on the gold because people want it and there's none around. So supply and demand comes into play. So at some point in time, let's assume that they were only going to make 1 million Bitcoins. At some point in time, we're going to reach the 1 million, and there'll be no more Bitcoins left to produce. So now that only thing that exists will be those 1 million Bitcoins, right? So let's say right now that there are 600,000 Bitcoins and 400,000 left to go. So over time, we can mine for those 400,000 until we reach the 1 million. Once we reach the 1 million, that's the end of any more production. And now that value just continues to rise. So if the 1 Bitcoin is worth 900 today, you can imagine when they reach that last Bitcoin, the Bitcoin could be worth $5,000 for 1 Bitcoin.
Now, do you feel like the understanding in our community of what commodities is, because I explained earlier in the first part of this when I talked about Bitcoin earlier, that Bitcoin is really a digital commodity, whereas gold is a hard physical commodity. The Bitcoin, as you said, is the same thing, it's just mined digitally, whereas gold is mined actual in reality. Is there a disconnect between our community and actually understanding what commodities is? Because we never really deal with commodities in our community, which I believe is causing us to fall behind in a lot of certain areas when it comes to things like Bitcoin and being up on it and what it is, because it's a lot of commodities that we could have the in on, because it's a lot of stuff developed in Africa. It's a lot of hemp textiles and everything being produced in Africa that are highly traded commodities that I'm pretty sure other Africans would like to see African Americans invest in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I mean, yes, we have a lack of knowledge in what I would call the STEM section, and that's where we produce industry and trade, provide jobs for our community. We lack in that. We lost that in the Martin Luther King integrationist era, where we integrated into a larger society. That society took control of our economic system and then redirected our learning. So now that we are not really proficient in what we consider or title as the STEM, we tend to lose an understanding in all things that fall underneath that. So when it comes to business in general, Black people are lacking. When it comes to building institutions in general, we're lacking. When it comes to what the brother just said, understanding financial terms such as commodities, which in simple layman's term, products and services is commodities, things that have value that one is willing to trade or buy. That is a commodity. Toothpaste, toilet paper, simple things. And then commodities can get as complicated as a Bitcoin, where all of a sudden a digital currency, something someone created digitally, now has a value and can be considered a commodity because it has value now. You see what I'm saying? So though the technique and the term of it sounds obscure, there was a time where a piece of paper in the form of what we call a dollar would have been just as unusual and just as foolish sounding as a Bitcoin was. Just as well as back in Africa, I did some research one time, and in the Kingdom of the Congo, they had something called a cowrie shell, or some type of shell that was their dollar, or that was their Bitcoin. Although it was physical, this is what they used as a medium of exchange for money. So money has always changed forms, but still it has the same types of assets that are identified as money.
Now, in understanding the STEM program, because we know we push that CRT thing that you dropped on the community here, that critical risk taker, and we talked about that earlier. But in understanding that paradigm with the STEM, a lot of people don't understand that economy is a science included in the STEM. That understanding the economy, how it works, and what the things we need to do in industry to move the economy is also part of the STEM program, because economists exist to do these things. But people seem to not acknowledge that we need Black economists out here to help develop the infrastructure of what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, economy is a byproduct of STEM. STEM being the foundation of learning that creates the ability to perform science and agriculture and technology and engineering, all based in mathematics, gives you the opportunity to produce a product or a service, which in turn produces industries, which in turn builds economies. So without STEM, you have zero economy. And so that is the need for all countries, all cities, all states, all tribes to formulate a STEM-based education in order to produce an economy. And without that, there is no economy to exist.
Now, in developing your Pan-Africanism that you talk about in a lot of the videos that I've seen, could you explain a little bit more your development of Pan-Africanism and how it's derived from what Booker T. Washington taught, and how it differs from some of the other Pan-African systems out there that are being pushed by some of the other major channels?
Okay, well, you know, you guys can find deeper breakdowns than I could give in a short answer on my channel, Digital Pitt Boss or Digital Pitt Boss Effect. But to answer the question in short, right, we come out of a situation where we go from slavery, and then we go into a Reconstruction era, you know, emancipation in the Reconstruction era. So in that particular time, Black folks are pretty much on the bottom of the totem pole. So what pops up out of that is Booker T. Washington heading down to Tuskegee, Alabama, and taking over this college and building it from the ground up. So as he develops the program, the circumstance for him was pretty much separate but equal. So now we're not allowed to integrate with white society and be a part of the white economy on equal level. So since we cannot be a part of it, it is now time to tool ourselves in order to produce our own economy. And so when you look at our economy and how to produce it, the first stages was, he said, that you have to build all learning on top of character. So based on character, you can now formulate the ability to learn. Now, what type of learning must you have? Well, you have to have all knowledge, but you have to go in chronological steps. First, you have to find food, shelter, and clothing. So in order to provide those early needs, you have to start with the STEM. Now, that goes in tangent with literary arts, as English and understanding reading is the foundation of learning as well. But those in themselves will not produce the technical need to build a community. And so the reinforcement was that the roots of building a community shall be the stem. The branches and the leaves shall be our literary arts, and the fruit shall be the products that we produce once we've created the community.
Now, with your view of Pan-Africanism, it differs because when we spoke on the phone earlier, you never been one to be a segregationalist strictly, to say, oh, we need to separate and everything like this. You was always like, one, we just need to worry about building the community the best way we can and getting the information from the best sources we can get it from.
Oh, yeah.
With that said, why do you feel the other platforms of Pan-Africanism push separatism so much when that kind of hinders us in our education ability in order to develop the community?
Okay, so Pan-Africanism, once again, was developed under a separate but equal policy that was initiated by the opposing group, which would at that time is the white people of America. They chose that we build that way, right? We never said, hey, you know, we want to get away from you. So Pan-Africanism is a response to that very thing, that you have separated us from your society, and so now we develop our own. So as we went a little bit further down the road, they decided that wasn't such a good idea, that we let the black people go and build their own cities, and now we're not getting anything out of it. So then when they decided to integrate us, they had to create the evil aspect or the evil guy. So now nationalism starts to look as the opposite of integration. And so no one ever said that what Pan-Africanism was trying to do was separate itself. We were trying to develop ourselves that we could become members of a global society so that we could operate on a global level, thus the name Pan-African, and Pan representing a global ideology for the upliftment culture, for upliftment of black people culturally and economically. Now, those who come with the separatist mindset, those would be radicalizing this concept. And so they take a radical point of view that I want to be separate, but it's called doublespeak because we never quite know what do you actually mean by separate. Do you mean that if we have a river that we share, that we can't drink from the same river? Or if we have products that one of us produce and the other needs, that we can't do fair trade with one another? It is never clearly defined by those who consider themselves to be separatists exactly at what extent are you trying to be separatist at. What I say is that integration was only about integrating our economy, but not our social condition. Our social condition was never integrated into white society, but our economics was. So what we try to say is the proper way to think of nationalism is not to be a separatist and go and isolate yourself in a turtle shell, but to be independent and self-dependent upon your community, that you could be an asset to the global world. And so that's the difference between the way I push this nationalist program and what the radicalized version of it is that came much later on.
Okay. Now, I asked that question because I watched some videos today and I noticed on a lot of the other platforms, they're starting to push an economic message. And their economic message is still laced with separatism. Whereas if you're going to do constructive business, you have to be open to attacking every business opportunity available. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of what do you think about some of the ideas and things that they're pushing, such as some of these real estate get rich quick things about let's go flip houses, let's do trade lines and things of this nature. And I need you to pay me so I can fix your credit. Things that we already have established throughout the community can be done totally free on your own with just a little bit of research.
Well, most of these guys that you're speaking of, they're not trained in any fashion other than one day they turned on their YouTube and made a video, and then after 500 videos later, all of a sudden they're popular, right? Now you can ask yourself, well, what training do you have, Pit Boss, right? And I say, well, the only training I have is the facts of what I got to say can be proven or disproven, and if what I'm saying is it can be debunked, then it would conclude what I'm about, right? Same with them. So when you start to learn these paradigms, that I call the paradigms, you start to learn what is the socialist view and what does a socialist believe? What does a nationalist believe? What does a separatist believe? When you start to pull all these terms on the table and you actually write down the definitions to each one, you come up with a mindset. So these guys have a liberal arts background. Whenever you have a liberal arts background, you tend to lead towards a more obscure history. And the way that history is shown through the eyes of liberal arts is always obscure. But when you look at the facts on the ground, you start to see what ideologies and paradigms were taught by those who push for nationalism. If you take some of the prominent people like Marcus Garvey or Booker T. Washington, at that time would have been very, very huge in this aspect. Their legacy was institution building. They all have institutions that were created around the rhetoric that they spewed at that time. So therefore, what they do today is they are just liberal art teachers who are taking a liberal view towards what they call Black power. No one ever defines what Black power is. When you ask them, they never define it, right? I have a video on my channel where I defined it, and I say that Black power is economic control over your environment. And that's all that I've ever seen Black power to be. But what Black power is put before us by the current leadership is that Black power is a fist and a march and just rhetoric, but no economic control, just the idea and the dream of having it. But when you say, how do we achieve economic control? Well, the entire thought process of economics is contained in the STEM. And thus, if you're not pushing the STEM program, you are not reaching nationalism.
And that's a great breakdown right there, Pitt, because when I think about the nationalism and as it relates to Bitcoin, I can look at the Chinese and see how they have taken to Bitcoin and began to dominate the marketplace right now of Bitcoin. No other place is producing more Bitcoin than they are in China, which is a country of STEM, because they're a communist country. So religion and fine arts really aren't their focus. It's been brought back in now as they've kind of, I guess you can say, opened their cultural borders to being more liberal. But the hardcore of their country is industry and developing products and copying products and maximizing what they can do with technology.
Yeah, well, your religious belief has nothing to do with the STEM, right? This is why it was integrated into Pan-Africanism, because whether you're a communist country or a democratic country, if you're a leader of today's market, which we have both democratic and communism, both of them education system is STEM. So therefore, STEM produces civilizations, period. It's just what it does. When you look back at all civilizations, Kemet, that's STEM. Any great city ever built is a STEM-based education going on over there. If you have no STEM base, you have no great civilization, because it's the fabric of technology and engineering. This is where it lies. Agriculture is a STEM-based science to growing large crops to feed large amounts of people. So no matter how you shake it, whatever position that you play, if you plan to be great, you must be STEM. It must be the foundation of your learning, and all your liberal arts is added on as the next level of learning to expand your thought. It's not that we don't need to push literary arts, it's that we were forced into literary arts in order to control our economy. And they have done a marvelous job, as we are no longer in control of a single industry.
Now, in regaining control of our economy through using the Bitcoin, what are some of the strategies that you think would be effective for our community to begin using, or just investigating and researching for themselves to see how to take advantage of this commodity, which is called Bitcoin?
Okay, well, a Bitcoin is just a tool in the toolbox. You know what I'm saying? The actual physical understanding of all of the subjects involved to taking over your community involve many more things. But in the aspect of the Bitcoin being used as a screwdriver per se, it's just going to apply itself the way that it functions properly for you to reach a goal. So the first thing to do is get familiarized with the Bitcoin. It's free to get a Bitcoin wallet. It costs you nothing. You just go to your app store and download. You can download Jaxx, it's spelled Jaxx. You can download another one called Circle, and then just investigate the program. It doesn't cost you anything, right? And then take time to read up on how people are utilizing. You can look around in your neighborhood and there'll be some sort of Bitcoin organization of people communicating about the subject near you. Go and visit the crowd, talk to people, start to get involved with just conversating about it. And if you got a little bit of courage, put $100 into an account and buy a Bitcoin and then go use it. Go shop with it and buy your goods. And just by merely operating with it, you'll get a sense of what it is and what it is not. Or if you got a little money, take $1,000 or the price of a whole Bitcoin, which you could buy Bitcoins in fractions. So you could buy $2 worth of a Bitcoin. It's just a fraction of the whole coin. But the current market is 900 for one Bitcoin. Buy the one Bitcoin the same way you have $900 sitting in a savings account that's producing no interest or very, 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 very little interest. Put the money in a Bitcoin, put 1,000 in your bank account, savings account, and 1,000 in the Bitcoin, and check on the two currencies 6 months from now and see what's what. And I promise you, the Bitcoin will do you better than your US dollar in that same amount of time. Just on holding it and not doing anything with it.
Now that's the analogy I gave earlier. Is why put your money in the bank and get $1,000 in the bank and they tell you you'll get a return of $6 at the end of the month, or you can put it in Bitcoin and potentially get a $500 return at the end of the month. And it just all depends. And like I always say, it's easier to deal with it right now in the digital age than it is to go out and find you a gold nugget and hold on to that.
Right. Yeah, currently, like I say, just about 6 weeks ago, I did a show on the Bitcoin. I showed the price. It was $750, right? Within, it wasn't even a full 2 weeks before it had leaped up $100. And then now it's up $200 since then. So had you had $1,000 in an account and a Bitcoin account that you paid $750 for at the time, that money would have made you at least $200 on your $1,000. So therefore, could you imagine if the price of Bitcoin goes to $1,500 and you bought it at $900? Now, even if the price falls, right, it is falling in adjustment to regular currency. So though you paid $900 for it, if it falls, you can almost agree that the dollar fell too. So when you go to spend the Bitcoin, you'll still buy the value of what you generated in it to begin with, because Bitcoin is also being measured against regular currency. So if regular currency falls, then in the Bitcoin falls, you still can go out and buy what you could have bought with that money had you not bought the Bitcoin. So it's not like you'll buy the Bitcoin and the value will fall, but the dollar rose. When was the last time your dollar gained in value just by holding on to a dollar? Ever since you had a fiat currency in your pocket, it has simply fallen every year since you've been on it.
Yeah.
And
now,
let me give you an example of that. When I was a kid, I could buy a Snicker bar for, let's just say 25 cents at the time. Maybe it was even cheaper. And for my mother, it was even cheaper, right? But for me, at a let's say junior high school level, I could buy a Snicker bar for a quarter. Therefore, I could get 4 Snicker bars for $1. Now, current day, a Snicker bar costs $1.09 or something of that sort. Let's just say $1. So now, my dollar back when I was in the junior high school could buy 4 Snicker bars. Now the same dollar can buy 1. And that is what you call the depreciation value in your currency. Now, let's take it 20 years from now, the same dollar will buy 1 Snicker bar. It's just that the Snicker bar will be half the size.
So it's all relative, really.
You'll still buy a Snicker bar with $1 because they're going to keep it with something you can afford. It's just like currently, if you go into a supermarket now, you go buy ice cream, the container for ice cream is smaller They no longer make that half-gallon big round tub you used to buy. They make a smaller fitted size, and they took the ice cream out so that they could keep the price the same that you used to pay.
Now, in the current political climate with the new president that we've gotten in Donald Trump, and the media sensationalizing race relations and how black people are pretty much going crazy like the world is going to end, how do you feel his business savvy and business mind is going to work to either affect or benefit our community for those who choose to take advantage of the economic policies that they may institute?
Okay, well, because I work from logic, calculated risk taking. I do not use my emotions when I think. I try to simply use my logic, right? So I looked at this. I took a quick look at Donald Trump's track record. He's never lost. Everything he's done, he's made it work. In things that were difficult to do for others, Donald Trump came along and made it happen. Real estate in New York had took a plummet. Donald Trump comes in town, drops a Trump building, and the price of real estate shot through the roof. He did this time and time again. There was a moment where he had a bankruptcy of some sort. He came back, borrowed back the money, made 50 times the money, and continued to win. So in the economic field, he's an absolute 100 winner. So now what could you expect his record to be? Well, at least pretty high compared to all previous presidents who doesn't have the wealth that he has. And he didn't inherit all of the wealth. He got a lot of money, but he did make the money in the market. So we could expect that his business sense is at a high level, right? Now, he's still running a country. So now there's going to be things that he probably can't control every aspect of the things he want to do. And he's probably going to step in a few pots that he's not prepared for, like he might be in the market sector. But based on what I believe is going to happen from a financial tip, he definitely seems as though he wants to play with China the way China has been playing with us for decades and manipulating our currency. And so if you look at the antics that they're going to put on the news about the rhetoric that's being spewed out of the White House, and you take an emotional charge from that, your logic flies out the window. So that on some back page of the White House, they're offering certain types of funding to anyone who qualifies, and you're not aware to go and to the page and implement your information because you qualify. But instead of looking for that, you were worried about what Trump said to some parking lot attendant. You're going to miss the boat, and you're going to be emotionally charged through the entire ride of Donald Trump. Because my prediction is that the race relations will stay at the front of the news the entire time, and only black people will respond to that. But you won't hear Asians talking about what Trump had to say. All you'll see Asians doing is building what they call the model citizen, creating a STEM program to empower their community economically, and bypassing marching down the street because they ain't getting something that they want. So my thing is, look for the money. If you have anything you want to say about Trump, ask him, where's the money? How do I get to the money?
My sentiment exactly, we need to look to take advantage of every opportunity possible as it's presented when it is presented. So yeah, that's what we got to do as a people.
Now you can expect all your leaders to do the opposite. All the leaders that come before your camera for the next 4 years are going to focus on race relations constantly. They'll never come before you and say, this month, Trump is planning to give away trillions of dollars if you are a 501c3, or if you know, this, that, this. And then when you finally do hear about a program that might benefit you, it's going to be a couple of bucks for a food card. Something simple that ain't got nothing to do with real economic gain. They're giving out grants for STEM programs in your neighborhood. Why don't you try Googling how to get one of those grants? And then you could get the $2 or $3 million that they'll hand out, and you can disperse that money to develop a STEM program in your neighborhood and pay yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars while you do it.
Man. Well, that's the plan, my brother. I'm glad we was able to have Digital Pit Boss on tonight on the Wallsy Media. It took a little bit of time to connect with the brother, but hopefully we'll be doing this again, time after time, taking a moment out to build with our brother Digital Pit Boss and this calculated risk taker movement and getting our communities built up and getting our kids educated with science, technology, mathematics, and engineering. We got to include it. Pit Boss, if you would let everybody know how they can get in contact you and reach you on your 2 YouTube channels and your email and your Instagram and everything, my brother, please.
Okay, for sure, man. I like to say, brother, at a lot of people that I see come on, you always have the most polite and constructive type of perspective whenever I see you on anybody's channel. That's why I was happy to come over here. You know, I don't always run the channels where I can get hundreds and hundreds and thousands of views. I just like to go where the good news is at, where I feel the vibe. I like to go where I'm celebrated, not necessarily where I'm tolerated. So with that, if you like to get with Pit Boss, you just simply go to YouTube and type in Digital Pit Boss Effect. I have tons of videos. I've probably done over about 400 or 500 videos on the line. If you get to the Digital Pit Boss Effect, all you got to do is drop me a comment on any video and I'll contact you immediately.
Perfect, man. Again, this is Nawazi Media. We shouting out thanks to Digital Pit Boss, all the people who help with Nawazi Media in the background that you don't see or hear on the channel. Hopefully, we'll be seeing and hearing from in the future. Stay tuned. We got a lot of interesting interviews, commentary, gardening information. We're going to be putting out the information about getting the cable contracts together soon. We're going to be working with Digital Pit Boss on a couple other projects. So please stay tuned. Watch his channel. Watch this channel. Check out the other brothers like Israel Doctor and DJ Black Cham with his music and beats, and all the other brothers that are in this movement for a positive direction. Again, we're going to check y'all out maybe tomorrow or maybe next week. But we'll be at y'all, man.
All right. Peace, brother.